Let me tell you something that is going to be uncomfortable to hear. You already know enough to be profitable. You have the strategy. You have the indicators. You have the rules written down somewhere, maybe in a journal, maybe on a sticky note next to your screen, maybe in your head. You know when to enter. You know when to exit. You know where your stop loss should go. And yet, at the end of every month, you look at your account and the number is either flat or it is shrinking. And you cannot figure out why. So let me tell you why. The problem is not your strategy. The problem is you. And until you fully accept that, not intellectually, not as something you nod along to, but deep in your bones, nothing is going to change. I have worked with thousands of traders over the course of my career, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that the traders who struggle the most are not the ones who lack knowledge. They are the ones who have too much of it. They have read every book. They have watched every video. They have back-tested every system, and they are still losing money. That should tell you something. If knowledge were the answer, you would already be rich. But knowledge is not the answer. Execution is the answer. And execution is a completely different skill than analysis. Think about this for a moment. You know exactly what you are supposed to do when your setup appears. You know the entry, you know the risk, you know the target. But what happens when the moment arrives? Your heart rate goes up, your palms get a little sweaty, you hesitate, you second guess, you think maybe I should wait for one more candle. Maybe I should see if it pulls back a little more. Maybe this is not the best time, and then the trade moves without you. Or worse, you take the trade, and the instant you are in, you feel a wave of anxiety. You start watching every tick. You move your stop loss a little wider because you do not want to get stopped out. You take profit early because you cannot handle the discomfort of watching unrealized gains shrink. And then you look at where the trade went after you close it, and you want to put your fist through your monitor. How many times has this happened to you? How many times have you known the right thing to do and done the opposite? This is not a knowledge problem. This is a behavior problem. And behavior problems require behavioral solutions. Not more indicators, not more courses, not a better strategy. A different relationship with yourself. Here is the lie you have been telling yourself. You have been telling yourself that you need to find the right strategy. And once you find it, consistency will follow naturally. As if consistency is some kind of byproduct of having good analysis. It is not. Consistency is a skill. It is a separate, trainable, developable skill that has almost nothing to do with your charts. Let me explain why. Every time you sit down at your screen to trade, there are two forces at work inside you. The first is your rational mind, the part of you that studied the strategy, that understands probability, that knows no single trade matters. The second is your survival brain, the part of you that interprets risk as danger, that triggers fight or flight when money is on the line, that hijacks your decision-making at exactly the worst moment. And here is the critical thing you need to understand. Your survival brain is faster. It is stronger. It has been running for millions of years. Your rational mind does not stand a chance in a fair fight. So you need to stop making it a fair fight. You need to build a structure that makes it impossible for your survival brain to take over. Not difficult, impossible. And that structure is what I am going to give you right now. Let me talk about the first practice you need to adopt. And it is the most important one. Fixed risk. Every single trade, you risk the exact same percentage of your account. I do not care what the setup looks like. I do not care how confident you feel. I do not care if you think this is the trade of the year. You risk the same amount every trade, every day. This is non-negotiable. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that is too rigid. You are thinking that sometimes the setup is better and you should risk more, and sometimes it is weaker and you should risk less. But that is your ego talking. That is your brain trying to predict which trade will win and which will lose. And you cannot do that. Let me say that again because it is the most important thing I will say in this entire video. You do not know which trade is going to win. You do not know. Nobody knows. Not you, not me, not the best trader in the world. Any individual trade is a random event within a probabilistic framework. You might have a 60% win rate, but you have zero ability to determine whether this specific trade is in the 60% or the 40%. Zero. So when you increase your risk because you feel confident, you are making a decision based on an illusion. You are pretending to have information that does not exist. And when that larger risk trade loses, and it will, eventually the psychological damage is 3 times worse than a normal loss. Because now you have not just lost money, you have lost money because you broke your own rules. And that creates a spiral of self-doubt that can take weeks to recover from. Let me give you an example of how this works in practice. You have a $10,000 account. Your rule is 1% risk per trade. That means your maximum loss on any trade is $100. Your setup appears. You calculate your stop-loss distance. You size your position so that if the stop is hit, you lose exactly $100. No more, no less. The trade wins? Great. It loses? Also great. Because you followed the process. You executed the plan. The outcome is irrelevant to your self-assessment. This is how you train yourself to detach from individual results. Not by reading about detachment. By structuring your risk so that no single trade can hurt you enough to trigger your survival brain. 1%. Every trade. Every day. Let me talk about the second practice. And this is the one most traders resist the most. Emotional journaling. Not trade journaling, I will get to that, but emotional journaling. After every single trade, win or lose, you are going to write down what you were feeling before, during, and after the trade. Not the price, not the indicator reading. What you were feeling, I know what you were thinking. You were thinking that sounds like therapy, not trading. But listen to me carefully. Your emotions are the single biggest source of data you are ignoring. Every time you break a rule, there is an emotion underneath it. Every time you hesitate, there is a feeling driving the hesitation. Every time you overtrade, there is an emotional state that triggered it. If you do not track your emotions, you cannot see the patterns. And if you cannot see the patterns, you cannot change them. Here is exactly how you do this. Get a notebook or open a simple document. After every trade, answer these 5 questions. 1. What was I feeling before I took this trade? 2. Did I follow my entry rules exactly? 3. Did I follow my exit rules exactly? 4. If I broke a rule, what was I feeling when I broke it? 5. How do I feel right now? That is it. 5 questions. Takes 2 minutes. But here is what happens. After 30 days of doing this, you start to see things you have never seen before. You notice that you break your rules after back-to-back losses, but only when those losses happen in the morning. You notice that you overtrade on Fridays. You notice that you feel anxious every time you have a winning streak because you are afraid of giving it back. These are the invisible patterns that are destroying your account, and they are invisible until you make them visible through writing. Let me be very specific about why this works psychologically. The act of writing forces your rational brain to process what your emotional brain experienced. It creates a gap, a tiny but powerful gap between the stimulus and the response. Over time, that gap widens, and in that gap lives your ability to choose the rule instead of the impulse, to choose the process instead of the emotion. Now let me talk about the third practice, and this one is about what you do before the market even opens. Pre-market preparation. Every single day before you place a single trade, you are going to spend 15 to 20 minutes preparing your mind, not your charts, your mind. Here is exactly what this looks like. You sit down with your trading plan. You read your rules out loud, not silently, out loud. You say the words, I will risk 1% per trade. I will only take setups that match my criteria. I will not move my stop loss. I will not revenge trade. I will accept whatever the market gives me today. You say these things out loud because speaking activates a different part of your brain than reading. It creates a verbal commitment. It is the difference between thinking about going to the gym and telling someone you will be there at 6 in the morning. The spoken word has weight. Then you review your emotional journal from the previous day. You remind yourself of the patterns you are working on. If yesterday you noticed that you felt anxious and took a trade that did not meet your criteria, today you are on alert for that feeling. You are naming it in advance. You are telling yourself, if I feel that anxious pull today, that is my signal to step away from the screen, not to take a trade. This is non-negotiable. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking you do not have time for this. You are thinking you just want to get to the charts and start trading. But that urgency you feel, that is the problem. That eagerness to skip the preparation and jump into the action, that is your emotional brain looking for stimulation. And it is exactly that impulse that leads to impulsive trades, broken rules, and blown accounts. The 15 minutes you spend preparing your mind will save you thousands of dollars in emotional mistakes. I have seen it 1,000 times. Let me talk about the fourth practice, and this is perhaps the most difficult one. Accepting losses in advance. Before every single trade, before you click the button, you are going to say to yourself, I accept this loss. If this trade hits my stop loss, I will lose $100, and I accept that loss right now before it happens. Here is why this matters. Most traders enter a trade hoping to win. They are focused on the profit target. They are imagining the account growing. And when the trade starts going against them, they are psychologically unprepared. They did not expect to lose. They hoped they would not lose. And hope is not a strategy. Hope is a vulnerability. When you accept the loss before it happens, something remarkable occurs in your brain. The loss stops being a threat. It becomes a known cost. It is the same as a business owner who knows that rent is due on the first of the month. They do not panic when the rent bill arrives. They already accounted for it. They already accepted it. You need to treat every stop loss the same way. It is the cost of doing business. Let me give you the exact words. Before you place the trade, you say, I am about to risk $100. I might lose that money. If I do, that is okay, because I followed my rules, and one trade does not define my edge. My edge plays out over hundreds of trades. This one trade is irrelevant to the big picture. You say that, and you mean it. And if you cannot mean it, if saying those words creates anxiety, then your position size is too large. Reduce it until the loss feels like nothing. Feel nothing on every trade. That is the goal. Now I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that if you feel nothing, then what is the point? Where is the excitement? And that question reveals exactly why you are not yet profitable. Because you are in this for the excitement. You are in this for the emotional high of being right, of catching a big move, of feeling smart, and as long as that is why you are here, you will never be consistent. Because the same emotional system that gives you the high of a win is the same system that gives you the devastation of a loss. You cannot have one without the other. The only way out is to stop playing the emotional game altogether. If trading feels boring, you are doing it right. Let me talk about the fifth practice. Post-market review. At the end of every trading day, you are going to spend 10 minutes doing a complete review. Not of your profits and losses, of your behavior. Did I follow my rules today? Every trade, did I take only valid setups? Did I use the correct position size? Did I honor my stops? Did I let my winners run to target? Or did I cut them short because I was afraid? You give yourself a score. Not a financial score, a behavioral score. Out of 10. 10 means you followed every rule perfectly regardless of outcome. 0 means you broke every rule. And here's the key. A day where you followed all your rules and lost money is a 10. A day where you broke your rules and made money is a 0. Read that again. The day you broke your rules and made money is a 0, because that profit is poison. It is a reward for bad behavior. It is training your brain to break rules. It is the most dangerous thing that can happen to a trader. I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The traders who track their behavioral score every single day for 6 months become different people. Not because the tracking itself is magical, but because the tracking forces them to confront the gap between what they know and what they do every single day. There is no hiding from it. There is no pretending. The score is there in writing. And over time, the desire to see that score improve becomes stronger than the desire to make money on any single trade. And that is when everything changes. Let me bring all of this together, because I need you to see the bigger picture. The reason you know the strategy but cannot make consistent profits is not because you are stupid. It is not because you are unlucky. It is not because the market is rigged. It is because you have been trying to solve a behavioral problem with analytical tools. You keep studying more, learning more, optimizing more, as if the next indicator or the next pattern or the next course is going to be the thing that finally makes it click. But it is not, because the problem was never on the screen. The problem is between the screen and the chair. Consistent profitability is not a destination you arrive at by learning enough. It is an identity you grow into by behaving consistently enough for long enough that your brain rewires itself. Your survival instincts quiet down, your emotional reactions shrink, your need for excitement fades, and what replaces it is something most traders never experience: calm execution. Trade after trade after trade, with no drama, no anxiety, no second guessing, just the process, just the rules, just the plan. So here's what I need you to do. Starting tomorrow, not next week, not when you feel ready, tomorrow you are going to commit to 5 things. 1, you risk the same percentage on every single trade, no exceptions. 2, you journal your emotions after every trade. 5 questions, 2 minutes. 3, you prepare your mind every morning before you open your charts. Read your rules out loud. 4, you accept the loss before you place the trade. Say the words, mean them. 5, you score your behavior at the end of every day. Behavior, not profits. Do these 5 things every single day for 6 months. Not 5 of those days, not most of those days. Every single day. And I promise you, your trading will transform. Not because you learned a new strategy, not because you found a better indicator, but because you became a different trader. A trader who executes. A trader who follows rules. A trader who does not need the market to validate them on every single trade. Remember what I told you at the beginning. You already know enough. The strategy is not the problem. You are the problem. But that is actually good news, because you can change. Not the market, not the strategy, you. And when you do, when you finally close the gap between knowing and doing, you will look back at this moment and realize that this was the turning point. Not a new indicator, not a new system. The decision to stop learning and start executing. 1%. Every trade, every day. That is where it starts. That is where everything starts.